What's up? I don't even know what I'm filming. I'm going to tie the blueprint for successfully articulating a streamer. Basically, I'm going to articulate a woolly bugger, and I'm going to put a deer hair head on it stacked around lead eyes. Why? Because it's fishy. Basically, it's a sex dungeon, right? If you don't want to do the head, you can just do chenille, and you basically have a peanut or a circus peanut. You can do a cone head with a marabou stack on top, and it's a peanut envy. You could do mallard flanks with a wool head, and basically it's a butt monkey or a boogeyman. I'm getting all my names wrong. I'm nervous to film a video. It's funny, but why? Why? So I can, 1, talk about articulations, 2, so that I can talk about hooks and how to proportion an articulated fly, 3, so I can teach you how to tie a woolly bugger, because everybody knows how, but for some reason not everybody does it right. I don't even do it right. I don't know who does it right. I don't think there's a right way, but this way is, you know, Kelly Gallup's way, so it's a pretty damn good way, but I'm going to teach it. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's going to be exciting, so I'm going to hop 2 because I'm wasting time. Anyway, I'm tying this 2-aught and a number 1. They're streamer, I don't even know what they are. They're streamer hooks from Partridge. Attitude streamers. I like them. They're pretty much similar to a Daiichi 2461. I think they're one size shorter in shank length, so they're basically the same shank length as a B10S, but they're a smaller diameter wire. But when you're picking hooks, I'm using a 2-aught and a number 1. Do you see that? If you want to make it smaller, use a 1-aught and a number 2. The reason why I do 2 hook sizes difference is because if you proportion your fly, right? If I grab both of these by the bend, you can basically see the 2 eyes line up with room for a head. So basically you're going to tie the exact same fly. Most successful articulated streamers are rinse and repeat, right? You tie a back fly, you tie the front fly, the back fly and the front fly are the same with the exception of the head. So when you articulate this, your back fly and your front fly are going to be the same in everything except for proportion, but there's room to tie a head. That's it. If you tie like a number 1 and a number 1, your back fly is going to be larger than your front fly, and your front fly is going to, it's just, it doesn't look right to me, personally. You can do whatever you want, but that's what I like. So, that's what I'm using. 2-aught and a number 1. I am not afraid of big hooks. Fish are not afraid of big hooks. Get over it. If you're tying streamers for the first time, I encourage you to tie on a 1-aught or a 2-aught. Just do it. Get it out of the way, because one day you're going to be tying triple articulated 10-inch musky flies, you know, and this is not going to look like a very, very big hook anymore. And you're going to be like, wow, I fish small flies. Anyway, so 210 denier. This is a Flymaster Plus. You can use a flat wax nylon. You can use gel spun. You can use whatever you want. But I encourage you to use a large thread count because it's a big fly. And if you're worried about bulking up, you can just use less thread wraps and more precise locations. But basically, tailing, marabou. You can use slopping if you want. You can use any type of hackle. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to do marabou. Now, when you tie an articulated streamer, if you proportion everything off the length of the hook, it doesn't matter what hooks you use, because you'll tie a proportional fly. So no matter what size you tie it in, it'll just grow proportionally. So measure it off the hook, hook length, boom, tie it in. Right? You can do a hook length and a half. You can do 2 hook lengths, but then you're kind of eyeballing it, right? I'm tying in the entire marabou stem to build bulk on the body of the fly. Now on the front fly, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but most likely I'm going to do 2 plumes, either one on top or bottom or 2 on the sides to cover my articulation gap, and I'll tie in both of those so that the front hook is twice as bulky as the back hook. Now I'm going to do something which is tie in a wire, and this is to counter wrap my hackle so that the fly is basically indestructible to teeth. And I'm tying with a white thread because I do not care what color my thread is, because you cover it up anyway except for this little tiny thread dam at the front, and I don't think fish care. So that's my opinion on that. But you tie it on the far side, so the camera side, not my side, so that when you wrap this around, you're going to catch your hackle, which we're going to tie in at the front of the hook and palmer backwards. Now I'm going to do something called a dubbing loop. If you don't want to do a dubbing loop, you can just tie in any type of chenille. You can do a long hackled chenille, like a crystal hackle, or like a polar chenille, or you can do a dubbing loop. I'm doing a dubbing loop because I didn't know what they were until like 2 years ago, and they're cool. So basically your thread's on the hook, bring your thread down, catch your finger on it, bring it back up, 2 wraps, right? Now you'll see I have this weird gap right on the hook. So to pinch this, the bobbin goes over the thread and then you just tie it back. So now you'll see I made a loop, just made a loop. And you take a dubbing twister. This is like a shepherd's hook. It's actually Gallup's dubbing twister needle thingamabobber, bodkin also. I don't know if he still sells them. It's made by Rising, but I would check it out on the website. I love it. But yeah. And so basically a dubbing loop, you can separate the fibers and put anything in there. You can put flash boo in there, craft fur, Arctic fox. You can put dubbings. Ice dubbing is what we're going to use today, right? So you can put a lot of cool stuff in them. Nicholas Bauer uses it to put a craft fur collar on his pike flies and stuff, but I'm going to take some dubbing out. That's quite a lot. I probably don't need that much, but whatever. And basically I'm going to orient my fibers, pinch and pull, right? Use the friction to orient your fibers in the same direction. I'm going to separate them so that they're long, or just, I don't know. And then you kind of just slide them in place. Booyah. And then the tension holds these guys where they need to go. You can slide this up. And then what you want to do is if you give it a few twists, maybe a dozen or so, it's going to put some loose tension on these fibers so that you can twist it up and they're not going to like fly out. And then you just pinch and twist. Pinch and twist. Whatever you want to do, and then you pull it tight and they all spin and it's good to go. Now normally I would pick this out because I like really long fibered chenilles. It's personal. But basically I got ahead of myself. I'm going to throw a half hitch up here if I can. This is horrible. Get in there. Booyah. Half hitched it. Now you don't need a rotary vise to do any of this stuff. It'll come in handy on the deer hair head, but you don't need one. But I'm going to use mine because I got one. Right, so then we're just going to palmer this forward. And yes, I put way too much in. And I also don't really care. Well, maybe it's perfect. Dang, this is going to be a big streamer. Love it already. So we wrap that up. We're going to catch that. Put a few wraps down. Cut it off, call it a day. Whatever you want to do. Alright. Now, I'm making a mottled, multiple color, whatever, olive. If you want to tie a woolly bugger on a streamer, please use schloppen. It's so buggy and webby and beautiful. It makes the fly. But basically, I trim this at the point where if I was to bend the stem, it would break, right? So I trimmed it at a flexible part so that I can palmer this and it's not going to snap on me. And then I just peeled away like the last 2 individual fibers so that I'm tying in the stem. And when you tie in the stem, basically you want to hold the fiber vertically on your side of the hook, and then you just catch it once in the front, and then you're going to catch it from behind. And then you want to pull that thread wrap that was behind it forward, and so now you have tension on both sides of the stem so your stem's not going to pull out. Throw down like 2 thread wraps and a half hitch, and now your hackle isn't going anywhere. Now, using the rotary function again, you don't want to turn this the wrong way, right? Because if you turn it the wrong way, the wire is going to loosen it up, or you're going to loosen the wire up when you tie it down. You always rotate away from yourself. Away from yourself. That way when you catch things with your thread, it adds tension to whatever was being palmered. Does that make sense? You're always tightening. You're never loosening, always tightening. But I'm going to grab this guy, and we're going to throw 2 full ones up top, and then we're just going to bring her down the body. Man, this is going to look atrocious. I love it. Taking the wire, coming underneath the fly, you catch your hackle tip. Look, hackle pliers are gone. And then you're just going to speed wrap that up forward to the eye of the hook. For a wire, it's a ultra wire from UTC in large. It's a little bit thick. I think medium would probably be perfect for most streamer applications. I don't use it to add weight, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is just counter wrapping the hackle, right? But gonna catch that. The eye of this hook kind of got away from me here. I don't really care though. I'm making a video. Nothing is perfect unless you're perfect. Now you can either break the tip off from wiggling it back and forth, or you can follow it down with your scissor stems and just pinch it off and pull. So I got this big nasty looking head, but don't bother me. I'm going to throw 2 half hitches on there, and then I'm going to super glue it. So, oh yeah, look at that. It's just buggy, right? You can come through, you can pick out some of this ice dub, which is all kind of got trapped by that wire because I left it a little too long in the dubbing loop. Now, if you want to do something like intruder style, I think that's right. I don't really know. I don't tie those types of flies very often. But what I like to do in my own personal streamers is I like hackle tails because they're big and swimmy and kick, right? And then you do like a dubbing body, and then you can palmer hackle up on the front, like typically marabou. And you tie a marabou stem in the same way, right? You cut it where if you bend it, it'd break. You tie in the base, and then you palmer it forward, and then you wrap over top of it so that everything's super secure. So look at that big buggy, right? This is your profile, right? This is your volume. This is your your bulk of the fly, your tail. We got a shiny body that we picked out a little bit from getting trapped on this wire. If a tooth gets in here, that wire basically has every wrap counter wrapped and locked down, so your entire hackle won't ever come unraveled, ever, right? It's perfect. It'll come unraveled between the sections of the wire, which will fish anyway. So you're good to go. If you wanted to, you could have saved a little bit of room up top, like maybe an eye length, right? Just left an eye length open, put some rubber legs in. And I'll tell you how to do rubber legs on the front hook. If you want, I will. I seriously will. So next, I'm going to do the articulation. Let's just do it. Alright, I tied my diagrams. They're not very good. But when you put the eyes towards the front of the hook, basically the width of your lead eyes is going to be the minimum width, right, of your sculpin head, if you're tying a sculpin head. So if you move them towards the front, it'll allow you to shape a sculpin head behind them, and they're not going to limit the width of the head, which they would if you move them farther back on the hook shank. Now, if you look at someone like Pat Cohen, his are moved a little bit farther back, and if you look at the Salkin sculpin, he basically cuts a vertical profile along the eyes, creating a minimum width, and then he shapes a sculpin head over top, right? So he avoids the issue of being limited by the eyes by using above the eyes to make the sculpin profile from underneath. So, boom. We're just going to tie these in pretty close to straight up front. And, okay, I forgot that I was explaining stuff. So when you tie in lead eyes, you can hold them on top, wrap them once or twice, and then rotate them to the bottom. Now wrapping in the same direction, because you switched them underneath, is going to create a figure 8, which is going to lock them in place temporarily, right? And then you want to figure 8 them so that your thread is actually doing the 8 underneath the eye, 8 underneath the eye, right? And you're going to do this a whole bunch of times. And this isn't what cinches the eyes down super awesomely. So now you can kind of see we have like this, all this thread on there, right? Now that thread, it needs to be, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to super tension this stuff by taking your thread over the eyes and under the hook, which is going to pull all these figure 8 wraps super tight, which is going to lock your eyes in place, which we're going to double secure with super glue. It's also going to build a mini thread dam above the eyes but below the hook, which is going to help reduce the urge to rotate. Now I kind of left a lot of gaps on the hook shank, right? And it's because I want this to be super kind of grippy and frictiony, and I want something for that wire to be able to grab. And I'm going to do a small little dam right here so that I don't go above that for my deer hair head. Now, articulating 49 strand 0.024 inch beetle on wire from Michaels. I've talked about it before. You can go down to 0.08, which I believe is what Kelly uses. If you go below that, which I did when I first started tying streamers, and I would have my back hooks break off after about 10 or 12 fish. So don't do that. Now if you split your hook into fourths, right, and then now you got quarters to your quarters, right, so you got eighths. I'm basically going to tie in the bottom eighth all the way down, through the bead, through the eye, through the bead, and then tie in the top eighth. So your wire is basically going to be on the perfect side of your hook. So I'm tying on my side, starting on the bottom eighth, and I'm just going to wrap it all the way down, using my finger to control the fact that it stays on that bottom eighth line, wrapping it back up and back down to put some good, wow, those were loose wraps, put some good tension on it. For beads, I just do glass beads from Michaels. I get glass beads from Michaels. Make sure the diameter is going to work. That'll be tight. Now the reason why I tie in the wire and then first and then go through the bead, through the hook, through the bead, back down is so that I can guarantee that my wire does not twist inside the bead, right? Because I want my fly to ride perfectly vertical as I can, like so. So I'm going to catch this with 2 or 3 wraps so that I can still pull this wire through if I need to. And I like the bead to basically just touch the back of the hook and to have a good kind of gap for my fly to move in. And then I'm going to wrap this down the hook shank just a wee bit and get that all good to go and tight and whatever. Put some good torque on this right up here. Cut off your excess wire. Be careful when you get towards the spot where you cut your wire, because it'll cut your thread if you're not super careful. Now I'm going to throw a 1/2 inch down here, which is where we're going to tie in our marabou to cover up this articulation joint, right? But first I'm going to hit this all with some super glue. Now I'm not going to show you me tying this front woolly bugger because it's the same as the back woolly bugger. I'm only doing 2 marabou plumes, either top and bottom or on the sides to cover this articulation joint, and they will probably stop right about here, right? They're not going to be super long. We're just looking to bridge that connection so that you can't see it very well. That's the plan. So I'm going to stop this, and when I come back on, it'll be time to do the head. You hear me? Booyah. Okay, so rinsed and repeated, right? Basically, 2 marabou plumes on the side, tying your wire, far side, pointing out, dubbing loop, ice dub, a little bit bulkier than on the back hook, tie that off, schlopping, tied in the stem, palmered backwards, counter wrapped with wire, tied off. Same fly as the back, proportionally equal with room for a head that we're going to do out of deer hair. Now if you want to tie in rubber legs, which are awesome, this is kind of going to be a sex dungeon if I do that. I'm not going to do that. It's just an articulated woolly bugger with a deer hair head. But if you want to tie in rubber legs, the Kelly Gallup way is to do a figure 8 over top of the rubber leg, one wrap around the hook, and then you cinch it down. Basically, the idea is that if you over cinch these down, if you tie these in with too much tension, you compromise the material, and when they are pulled on, instead of stretching, they'll break, right? Now, if you watch like a Brian Weiss video, he just V-ties them in and lays them back. I like to do that because you can control where they are. You can use them for lateral lines and stuff like that. If you just tie them on top with a figure 8, you kind of lose the control that I would rather have. So basically, just don't tie them in too tight. Put a loose wrap on them, put 2 loose wraps going up, and then leave it at that. They're not going to come undone. It's like wrapping your finger with thread. You're going to cut the circulation off. You're not going to be able to pull it out. You just want to cut the circulation off on the rubber. You understand what I'm saying? So basically, to tie them in, drape them over your hook, one wrap over top, bring it back over top. Now what you just did is you figure 8'd them, and you can pick up the figure 8 so that you can position your legs where you want them. One wrap, and then you just cinch that down. Now you have 5 legs on either side. Half hitch it, tie it off, whatever. They're not going anywhere, right? And you didn't tie them in super tight to the point where you hurt the material. So I'm actually going to take these off. So that's how you do that. Now, I'm going to put a deer hair head on this. When you're doing most stacking and packing work, you use belly hair, but I'm pretty sure this is hide hair. It's a Primo strip. If you get your deer hair anywhere, I would get it from Kelly. But basically, you want coarse hair, right? Coarse hair is basically when you're feeling hair. If it feels super slippery, you're feeling under hair, you're feeling fur, the stuff that that we're going to take out that you don't want. You want a nice coarse hair. You don't want any cowlicks, right? You want relatively long fibers. So just go to your shop, pick up some, and just play with it and touch it. Like honestly, if you don't have a local shop, I would call Kelly and be like, hey man, I need a Primo strip. Hook me up with some good stuff, because he knows what to look for. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna cut it off the hide, take a comb, get all the crap that we don't want in there. Basically your short fibers and your fur, right?